Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the wonderful Unclassified podcast. It is officially 1 year of recording. Isn't that crazy?
Look at us.
They look at who would have thought? Not me. No, we did it, and people that are so happy and they're so glad to see. So remember to give us 5 stars on Spotify. Give us a like on YouTube. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars over there. I mean, our Apple listeners are the strongest soldiers. It's such a bastion of negativity. When I talk about the Apple podcast reviews, it kind of feels like going into like those cantinas in Star Wars, where it's like it's a hive of villainy. That's kind of how it feels over there. But there are some nice people. Anyways, we are back after a 1-week delay. Preston, you were being a world traveler. I was being a United States traveler. And but now we're back and better than ever. But however, folks, I have devastating news for you. It is so over in a way. It almost makes me feel hysterical for saying that it's so over, right? Because previously, earlier, I'd say it's so over, and it would be like minor things. But now, our buddy Ukraine, friend of the pod, is looking down a barrel of a gun.
Whole country, yeah.
And it is so over. Preston, how you doing, baby?
So I was at the Dubai Air Show for a couple days, and it was great. And we got some good content coming out from that here shortly. And when that happens, my time zone is like 10 hours off, right? So I'm a train wreck. And I just don't – we were so busy getting content in there, fast and furious, that I just don't spend a lot of time keeping up with the news and try to just see a couple headlines when I can. So, of course, I get back to the airport yesterday, flying back home, and this whole thing is unraveling. And it's frustrating to see this. My gut says – and we're going to run through – part by part. We're going to run through all 28 parts of the plan today for today's episode and discuss each one of them. My gut tells me that Trump is tired of this war dragging on, and he made a statement yesterday in the White House when he had his new favorite mayor standing next to him, Mamdani, and he said that this war doesn't affect us. And I think that's the core. If you view what we're going to get into here in a second as this has no effect on the United States, then it probably makes sense. I hard disagree with the president on that one, and I'm becoming more and more concerned that there's nobody around him to intervene and say, there are a lot of ways that this affects us, both near and long term. But if you genuinely believe that this is like a foreign planet and it does not in any way come back to us at all, then okay, I guess this is what you throw out there. But this is a pretty depressing 28 points we're going to get into.
Yeah, these points are absolutely ridiculous, and it should be no surprise to anybody that Secretary of State Wickoff is the one who acquired this plan. This plan does appear, at least according to some Ukrainians, to be translated from Russian. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so let me read off what came out of this here, because there's a couple key components. First off, I would not read too much into that assessment. This was supposedly a plan that was leaked, and one of the people who had the plans was the Russians. So if the leaked plan was in Russian, like that would not be the craziest thing.
That do be true.
That's one part of it. But also the assessment that it was written in Russian, like, again, even if Russia wrote segments and those segments ended up in the draft, I got how like the headline there is bad, but I don't think that's the craziest thing ever.
That's fair.
Now, the assessment was based off of some terminology that we don't often use in the United States, but it's not that crazy. In fact, I got a link to the thing that talked about that. Let me pull that up real quick because.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to pull this Guardian link
What
up.
is many viewers, including me and including you, although we're not viewers, we're the chatters, right? And what has brought about this urgency that Ukraine has to accept this by Thursday? It just kind of seems to have come out of nowhere. It was like he had given up on it, and we were talking about maybe we'll give Tomahawks, and it was like they don't have it, but then now they can do it. And then all of a sudden it's like you have to agree to this by Thursday or the United States is no longer your ally. Which I would argue,
I don't know what the
United States is no longer their ally anyways. So
we're used to 2 weeks, not 5 days. So the terms, and I think this is important because again, like it's entirely possible that Russia gave Witkoff 28 points and Witkoff put his name on the top of it and handed it over. Like, I'm not putting it by him at this point. That guy has been duped 12 ways to Sunday. But the text that was called out was, "It is expected," is a clunky, passive construction in English. We don't say that very often. But, like, "it is expected" is not, like, the craziest series of words to use in the English language. They also called out the words ambiguities and to enshrine. And, like, I don't know. Okay, I guess if we're really doing a forensic analysis here, like, maybe those are more often used in the Russian language, but I don't know that those alone should indicate that this is, like, certainly a Russian. Here's the thing: you don't have to look at those words. You can look at the actual text of the document, and what it calls for, to say that this is pretty clearly what the Russians wanted, at least in part. I should note that Putin already has indicated that he hasn't seen it at all, which is weird. And then went on to say we're ready to continue this war and achieve all of our objectives by military means. So let's not pretend like Russia has accepted this and we're just waiting on Ukraine. Nobody has accepted this, and both sides are kind of confused where the hell it came from, to be honest.
Yep. Absolutely. Full stop. So it is ludicrous. Do you want to go through this now?
Let's do it. We're going to start with the full plan here. I'll read one off and go back and forth, each kind of react and respond to each. The full plan, number 1, Ben, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed.
LOL. I mean, like, okay. But no.
Partially.
It won't be. But what do you think?
I think there's a lot more that are worth getting into in this than that's just like a random sentence they decided to put at the top.
Yeah, I mean, that was just my reactions. Right. Like, of a plan like this, it don't matter. Anyways, number 2. A comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled.
Hey, there's the Russian language, right? One reading of this is that they're looking at the term ambiguities as to mean all actions, as in, like, what's the term I'm thinking of? Amnesty. Yeah. So we're going to wipe clean anything that may have happened. And some people are viewing this as Russia will not be held accountable for war crimes. Hate to see that put into writing. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is it's unlikely that we see anybody, any serious government leaders put up on war crimes trials anytime soon. That's just not the way our international structure is these days. But number 3, Ben, it is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will not expand further. What say you?
That's pretty funny. Nonsense. I mean, what? This could have been resolved if they just had not invaded Ukraine in the first place. And also, Russia doesn't get to decide where NATO goes. If NATO wants to expand to Latin America, if it wants to move into Africa, if it wants to bring in the stands, it can do whatever it wants. I don't understand why we are, allowing Russia to decide that. And also, they will not invade their neighboring countries. That's a classic, because Russia never invades anything, as you know. They are always provoked, or they send in unmarked soldiers that for some reason everyone's like, oh, who could it possibly be? It's ludicrous. I mean, I can't believe we're off to point 3, and we're already writing nonsense like this. What do you think?
Well, okay, so we are going to get to territorial disputes. That's somehow number 21, just so everyone's tracking.
Classic.
Like, that is a topic. It's a crazy ask, but it is in here. This one should be getting a lot more attention. Number 3, the fact that NATO will not expand further. This is a de facto Russian veto on the NATO alliance. Like, this is neutering NATO. The alliance, are you kidding me? Like, and this is not Ukraine joining NATO. This is different. There is a whole nother point in here about Ukraine not joining NATO. NATO will not expand. To your point, Ben, if NATO decides, you know what, maybe actually we could be in Latin America or maybe the Pacific or wherever, that is up to the NATO alliance. A couple key things here. First off, Russia certainly cannot decide that. The idea that we're even kind of floating this idea of, hey, what do you guys think about this, is ridiculous, embarrassing that we even put that in writing. But also, we can't agree to that. The way the NATO alliance works, and I know our listeners know this, is a consensus. All 32 member states have to agree on something. So let's say that country Prestonia decides they want to join NATO and they submit their application, the entire block of NATO member states, all 32, have to say yes. Not 31, not 30 and 2 abstentions, not 17 for a majority. 32 have to say yes. So no single member state gets to decide that NATO will no longer expand at all. But They can kind of decide that unofficially if they're always going to vote no for every future member state. I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but that's kind of my read on this, is that we can't speak for NATO. We can't guarantee that NATO is going to enshrine that in their it's not the Constitution, is it? It's in their founding documents. So are we kind of suggesting that we're just going to not agree to anybody else joining NATO? I hate this part. I think it is. I think we're just bending over, and I don't understand why.
This is what leads me to believe that there have been no career, at least American career professionals who wrote this or had any part in this, because Marco Rubio, anyone who works in that State Department, would never write language like this, because they don't assert that they have domain over NATO like this, right? This is purely like, unless you believe that the United States fully controls the Western Alliance in every single way and everyone else is a puppet, you wouldn't write something like this. So I agree with you. This is ludicrous. All right, here's number 4. A dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and future economic development.
I mean, look, it sounds like you threw something into ChatGPT and said, give me some good diplomatic speak for we want two countries to get along. There's nothing to read into that. It's pretty...
We're part of NATO.
Blah.
We're now, all of a sudden, we're the referee? What are we doing here, dude? This is... I thought it was better when ICE was terrorizing the city, and now we're off to bothering other people. Bring them back. Bring them back. It's better than whatever this is. All right, number 5.
You're getting all the meaty ones here. All right, number 5. Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. Now, let me get into some details on this one, because the document that I have pulled up does not provide them. So when we're talking about those security guarantees, they say, let me get it here. Any future significant, deliberate, and sustained armed attack by Russia on Ukraine shall be regarded as an attack threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community, and the United States and its allies will respond accordingly. The document includes lines for signatures from Ukraine, the United States, the European Union, NATO, and Russia. The security guarantee would be for an initial 10 years and could be renewed by mutual consent.
Kind of like the Budapest Memorandum. That one worked so well. Right? I mean, do you have any reaction to it? That's just my read on it. So this seems like not real.
It's not real. Anytime that... So the core of NATO is the security guarantee. That's the thing. The teeth to the alliance. Russia, as you will see as we go through this document, and they've been staying for years, they do not want Ukraine in NATO. That's not because of, they get to wave some nice NATO flags over their territory. It certainly has nothing to do with sharing of military technology, because Ukraine is getting anything and everything they want at this point. It has always been about the security guarantee. Yeah. So if they're going to say no to NATO and yes to a security guarantee, guess what? That security guarantee is not going to have any teeth. It's not going to be real. And you can see that in this document. So first off, it is not going to be an attack on one is an attack on all, as we see with the Article 5. The language is that any, quote, significant, deliberate, and sustained armed attack. Ben, let me ask, what is a sustained armed attack? Is it one night of missile barrages?
Well, I mean, you do present a very good point here. That, yeah, if the Russians just start and stop, does that count?
If they destroy the Ukrainian Air Force in a 2-week salvo, is that significant? Or is it not significant because troops haven't moved across the border? More importantly, deliberate. What if, hold on, I don't want to sound crazy or conspiratorial here, but what if the Russian army isn't involved at all? It's just some separatists that happen to have Russian military equipment. And what if it's not Russia So that's definitely not deliberate.
This is like the perfect President Trump clause, because Mr. 2 weeks over here, is it sustained? Well, we'll give it 2 more weeks and we'll see. Then it's not sustained, right? This is ludicrous. Also, who's going to believe this agreement? Like, the core of the American security guarantee is that in reality it's never really been tested, at least in like Iraq invaded Kuwait, and maybe there was like a loose framework there, and then of course we had one with South Korea, but it's never really been tested in a way with like a full nuclear power. And so the whole thing is kind of just everyone has to believe that it's real, because does anyone believe that the United States will trade, a nuclear strike on LA instead of Kyiv or whatever? And I think the answer is, with this administration, no. With Biden, I think the answer is probably still no. And so this is nothing. Nobody believes this. And if anything, putting ourselves in this position only helps create the further falling apart. And also, I think, creates nuclear proliferation, given that it'll reveal that you cannot count on the United States to come to your aid. I think this is nonsense. And we're just speed running the end of, it's not an empire, but of this great thing we have going on here.
In my general view on all of this, and we'll jump into number. Let's see, that was number 5. So we'll head over to 6 here in a minute. And before jumping into that, like, my general view on this is, one, it's not good for Ukraine. Like, if you're reading this and you live in Ukraine, you're Ukrainian, like, you don't like this at all. As an American, I don't like this. I feel like we are just we've talked about this before. What happened to where it's Russia needs to be concerned about what we do?
Yeah.
Where did that go? What has happened in this world? Like, we were watching the Russian military day in and day out, and we are terrified of how they might react to anything we do, to include putting troops in Western Ukraine to train them. Like, everything, we're just petrified about the capabilities of the Russian military. What are we doing here, man? If we have the biggest, most lethal military that the DOW likes to say over and over and over again in the history of mankind, why are we acting like we don't?
Dude, I fully agree. Russia is a developing nation. It is a developing nation that doesn't produce anything anyone wants. The Russian people themselves are paralyzed through political apathy. That's why they have a dictator, and they won't do anything about it. Number 6, the size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel.
Of course, because that's what you expect in history, right? That's what happens. You have an invading force, moves into their neighbor country, and then in order to secure a peace plan, a ceasefire agreement, you go to the victim and say, you guys, little too strong militarily here. We gotta dial this back to make sure, what? You can't put up resistance next time? Explain the rationale there to me. What?
Yep.
Like, imagine at the end of World War I, everybody sat down and was like, France, guys, you cannot be ready to receive the German assault like that next time. Ridiculous. And we just let Germany go about it however they wanted. Like, what are we doing here? This is absurd. Now, the argument would be that Russia has the upper hand, and I would say in some regards they do, but let's not pretend that Russia is just steamrolling throughout this war. They have a lot of problems right now, and they are putting on a nice face, but they are in a lot of ways struggling. So the idea that we're just going to, like, again, this goes, you know what the best security guarantee for Ukraine is right now? Outside of NATO membership, which I think would be number 1, is a strong Ukrainian military.
Yeah.
A strong Ukrainian military will prevent Russia from trying to attack again, which will prevent the United States being in the difficult position in 1, 3, 5, 10 years of having to go, oh, but that's not a sustained attack, and losing even more credibility. I don't know why. Like, we clearly are not going to back up these security guarantees. It is beyond me why we would also want to limit Ukraine's ability to defend themselves, because we clearly are not going to do it. It's, yeah. All right. Number 7.
Bought and sold. Number 7, Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future.
This is yours, Ben.
Yeah, look. This is ridiculous. This is so stupid. the Russian state better hope I never become president, so help me God. I think this is capitulation, and it's also surrender, and it also pretty much guarantees a war in Europe in the future here. Does anyone think Russia's going to stop? When has Russia ever stopped? They've been going at this since 2008. Nonstop. Whether it's Georgia or Ukraine, they just keep going. Or Syria. Or many countries in Africa. Everyone's a victim of this. Okay? So I think this is nonsense. Another thing, but also it definitely feels like a restate of point number 3 as well.
It's not, though. That's the thing. It's not. Number 3 is no expansion at all. Then this one talks about Ukraine specifically.
Right.
That's why, to me, 3 is so ridiculous. It's talking about NATO writ large.
Dude, if I'm a European leader right now...
How is NATO... Yeah. How is the United States negotiating a NATO defeat in a war they didn't fight? How is NATO giving up things to Russia right now? Are you kidding me?
This country's turning into a joke real fast, man. All right, what's
number 8? Number 8. NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine.
Okay. What? Okay. Is that just so they can preempt any European, peacekeeping force?
To me, this means they didn't talk to the Europeans hardly at all, because they are in the process of planning troop deployments to Western Ukraine for logistics and training missions. So if that's either during or as soon as a ceasefire goes into place, apparently we just nixed that with this deal.
So what does this mean, though? Diplomatically, NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. At a very surface level, that seems to imply nobody in the alliance. But that's not what that means. A lot of countries, especially the United States, do a lot of things that doesn't involve NATO. So can France and England do it themselves? Right? If they're not part of, if it's not part of a NATO mission.
That's a good point. That's technically the coalition of the willing was outside of the NATO alliance.
Yeah. So does that count? Is that the workaround?
We'll see. The details, there's no additional details here.
So number 9.
Something tells me that Russia is not intentionally leaving carve-outs. So we'll see. But
that's fair. So number 9, this is one of my favorites. I'll pull up the tweet from the Polish president here in a second. European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland.
So all of them, or what's the?
Yeah, all of them.
I mean, seriously, that's the entirety of what it says. What is that? Take it away, Ben. I'm not sure I fully understand
Donald
what
Tusk
that's about.
Says, I don't know if he's the president. I don't know.
He's the prime minister. He's the prime minister.
Prime minister. I felt like he was prime minister, but now he's the president now. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Current prime minister.
The government structures of random nations don't concern me. But this is what Donald Tusk said. All the decisions concerning Poland will be taken by Poles. Nothing about us without us. When it comes to peace, all negotiations should include Ukraine. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. So Tusk is understandably surprised to learn that the U.S. and Russia have cooked up a text which specifically says that European fighter jets will be based in Poland without actually consulting Poland. So
to be clear, I'm pretty sure Poland read this on Axios and got to number 9 and was like, what?
Yeah,
Where?
Hold on.
Who?
We didn't agree to that. Yeah. It's got I'm getting steamed up here, but they
All right, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Wait, I've lost
number
the
10.
agreement. Oh, I have number 10's you because I just read number 9.
Number 10, the U.S. guarantee. The U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to decisive coordinated military response, all sanctions will be reinstated. Recognition of the new territory and all other benefits will be revoked. If Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without cause, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid.
Without cause? Why is that? That's so specific. Right?
That last one is strangely specific, yeah.
What does it matter if... What?
But anyways, this is just saying if either party violates, then everything is invalid, is kind of all it says.
Well, hold on. The key here. The U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee. Does it surprise you that the guy who wants to push this through has been investigated for racketeering charges in New York City before. Does that surprise you? It doesn't. Certainly does not surprise me at all. This is ludicrous. First off, that fourth one, if Ukraine launched a missile on Moscow and St. Petersburg, is very specific to an extent that is confusing, because I assume they're not launching a missile without there being an invasion. So that's weird. Maybe we're missing something there. Anyways, for the number two,
it must not have been translated correctly from its native Russian, but yeah.
That's true. Number two, if Ukraine invades Russia, it'll lose the guarantee. Okay. That's not going to happen. But also the fact that it's even laid out there, because the way a security guarantee works, everyone knows this. They're defensive. So why are you writing it down?
That's right? Where a lot of this, the capping of the Ukrainian military comes in, is Russia continues to present Ukraine as a threat to them.
Yeah.
And it's being repeated in here in this component, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So number 12, a powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including, but not limited to, the creation of a Ukrainian Development Fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. Joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential areas. Infrastructure development, extraction of minerals and natural resources. The World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts.
Nothing really out of the ordinary there. It's nice to see rebuilding being addressed in this agreement. At this point, this type of thing, I would put pie in the sky. It's just a lot of, we'd like to do this, and then if we do that, we'd like to do more. Saying the World Bank will develop a special financing package, great, that'd be a good thing. That alone would be a significant discussion about what it actually looks like and the implementation and all of those things. So this is good. It's there. I don't think we can read too much into this. Number 11, Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is being considered.
Okay. Isn't that happening anyways?
I think it's happening, but also, does the European Union know this?
You're right. This has been negotiated without anyone in Europe.
It's just weird. It's just weird, right? That if you step back and think about it, we are the United States and Russia are telling the European Union and Ukraine, okay, yeah, you guys can do your thing. What? I don't know. I feel like a lot of this, we are kind of steamrolling over Europe in a lot of this. I don't know that it's going to come out real well for us, but let's keep rolling here.
Number 13, Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case-by-case basis. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. Russia will be invited to rejoin the G8.
Not too shocking. A lot of the talk around the Trump wanting to get to a peace plan, we mentioned earlier how he doesn't necessarily think that this affects the United States. He does look at a lot of this around the world, and we saw J.D. Vance echo this a couple days ago, as everybody should just be doing business together, and war prevents business. So what's the problem? Stop war, make deals. And he views it very singularly through that lens. And in some conflicts that I think has worked out and helped to lead to some sort of ceasefire or even a for now, lasting peace. I don't know that it's that simple with Russia and Ukraine. J.D. Vance this weekend kind of suggested that, it's that simple, guys. Just, start trading. Start selling things to each other. And I think there's probably a little more to it than that. But, the fact that we're trying to reintegrate Russia into the global economy as, a key component of this does kind of track with, I think, how this peace process has been viewed from the start.
I don't understand why Russia gets reinvited to join the G8. They're not eligible. There's a reason they're kicked out. You have to be a democracy.
Because we're courting Russia. That's the thing that, again, this is NATO lost. According, like, as I'm reading this, NATO lost, and we are ceding to Russian demands.
The
So, like,
G8,
what if Russia won?
yeah.
That's how it comes across.
Inviting Russia to the G8 seems like a good way to create a G6. Right? Like, okay, everyone shows up to the meeting, but now the real meeting, now that the President of the United States is gone and the Russian president's gone, now the real thing begins with, I guess, what? It's Canada, Japan, and Europe at that point? So, whatever. Anyway, so number 14. Frozen funds will be used as follows. $100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in U.S.-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. The U.S. will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. Europe will add $100 billion to increase the amount of investments available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. The remainder of the frozen Russian funds will be invested in separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint projects in specific areas. This fund will be aimed at strengthening relations and increasing common interests to create a strong incentive not to return to conflict.
We've heard this before with this sounds very much like the mineral deal, in that, like, if you remember, that was the security guarantee, is we're going to have a common economic interest, and once we have that, we're going to defend it. And like a week later, Russia struck a U.S. factory in western Ukraine with a missile, probably sending a bit of a signal there. It strikes me as a little bit of that. The idealistic side of me doesn't really like talking about the profit margins that can be made from the spoils of war, even though that is part of the world we live in and always has been. It stings a little bit, I think, seeing it written out this clearly. Maybe I'm not reading this correctly, but it sounds like we're going to unfreeze Russian assets, invest those in allow Ukraine to invest those, but then we're going to take 50% of the Ukrainian profits?
Oh, well, that's correct. So, but then also, Europe is going to add $100 billion of their own money, not frozen Russian funds. So Europe also is going to pay $100 billion, just like Russia is through their frozen assets. But then frozen European funds are also going to be unfrozen separately. And then the remainder of the frozen funds that they're separating then gets invested into U.S. and Russia. So Europe is not only do they have to pay, but they're also not getting anything in return either. So we have put Europe down to give us $100 billion, and then to use all these Russian assets to give them back to the U.S. and Russia. That's a classic. Someone should tell Macron this.
There's probably a reason why Europe's not very excited about this one. 15, a joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to promote and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement.
Oh, that's good. We should, yeah. It'll be Vladimir Putin, Lavrov, and Medvedev, and then it'll be our most trustworthy people, Witkoff and Hegseth. Perfect. All right, number 16. Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine.
Wow. I noticed here, again, maybe the original Russian stated it a little bit differently, but this makes it sound like that is the policy and they're going to enshrine it. The way I would write that is they will enshrine a policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. We got to start from something here, guys. Let's maybe begin there. But anyways, I hate these. It doesn't matter at all. You and I know that doesn't matter, and I hate that that's taking up space in something like this. It could have been a 27-point plan. It didn't need to be 28. But 17. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons, including the START 1 treaty.
I don't really have any opinions on this. I think START's good. I think that is good to have. But I don't know. I kind of think we're entering into an age where it doesn't really matter. It almost kind of feels like a giveaway to the Chinese. Because unless the Chinese are forced into one of these nuclear agreements, I don't really see why we should be hamstringing ourselves through agreeing to one with Russia if the Chinese are not bound by one yet. So that's why I favor a three-way agreement there.
Senator Wicker already came out and said, like, that is the most ludicrous part of this plan, that we are on the verge of trusting Putin with arms control. That's one that would need to go through the Senate, too.
Well, but also, am I wrong to believe that Putin has been following the arms control agreements? Despite being a war criminal whose only place is in the ground, he has been following the nuclear weapon agreements. Like, he's not in violation of those. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think they're in violation with with some of the ranges of their missile systems.
Okay,
I believe that's one where they stepped out of compliance pretty quickly. So the United States did not return to that agreement because Russia wasn't agreeing to it. But I don't know. Those things are all. We'll see. Anyways. The Senate. I don't think the Senate's going to agree to that one. What do we got next year?
18. Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. They already are.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is like they are a non-nuclear state. Does just the nature that they don't have nuclear weapons, does that mean like they take a pledge to never try to acquire nuclear weapons? Isn't that kind of the de facto stance on the international stage? Or
let me Google this real quick. But I'm quite certain they're a member of the NPT. They are. So they are a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement.
So you're telling me this could have been a 26-point plan?
Yeah. What's so weird about this is that like that was like part of the Budapest Memorandum. Is that, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement is the crown jewel of U.S. American foreign policy. They have gone across the world. They've gotten everyone to sign on to this. They have, they're giving nuclear fuel to countries you wouldn't even believe we're giving nuclear fuel to as a way to keep them away from getting nuclear weapons. It is interesting that this is like written out here. If I'm Ukraine, I'm not agreeing to this at all. I would use it as leverage against the Americans, and I'd also use it as leverage against the Russians, because, nothing says you can't build nuclear weapons while being an NPT member, but there are just, like, verification things. But if I'm Ukraine, I'm not. 18's a non-starter, especially if this is being forced upon me. Number 19, the Zaporizhzhia. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the IAEA, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine, 50-50. Oh, how nice.
So, to be clear on this one, Russia invaded Ukraine, took over a nuclear power plant, and said, we now get half of the power here. And that might be viewed as some sort of Russian concession, but if you take over your neighbor's house, kick them out, and then say, actually, you guys can have the garage, you still took over your neighbor's house illegally. So IAEA, from what I've seen so far, would probably be on board with that. They've been pretty strictly just focused on making sure the safety of the nuclear reactors are ensured. So we'll see what that looks like. But 20, both countries undertake to implement educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting understanding and tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. Both countries will abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and prohibited. I don't know, Ben. Sounds pretty woke. What's up here?
That's so bizarre. Eliminating racism and prejudice. Since when do the Russians care about that? Is it? I would agree to this.
Defund USAID because they had like programs that sounded just like that.
Yes, I would agree to this, but Americans have to decide the curriculum. Although I'm not sure Americans can grasp the kind of beef different European countries have with each other, because I don't know, our racism's not like that. Ours is entirely different, right? So, this just seems like Ukraine has to tell everyone to love Russia. Right, and then Russia gets to tell everyone that Ukrainians are actually Russian. Am I wrong? That's just kind of what we have here. All right, number 21. Territories. Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. Kherson and Zaporizhzhia will be frozen along the line of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact. Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside the 5 regions. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of Donetsk Oblast that they currently control, and this Withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral demilitarized buffer zone, internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. If Russia's going to stay out. All right, we'll go from least crazy to craziest take here. Russia relinquishing agreed territories it controls outside of the 5 regions. That would be small buffer areas in Sumy and Kharkiv. Not a lot of land there, and they haven't really focused offensive operations there. It was kind of expected that that would be something they would trade back. Kherson and Zaporizhzhia will be frozen along the line of contact, de facto recognition. So that generally means in Kherson, west of the Dnieper River, will be Ukrainian, east will be Russian, and Zaporizhzhia, there's a small portion in the northwestern portion of that oblast that Ukraine still controls. Okay, again, you've got a frozen line there. There's going to be questions about who patrols that, because those lines are right up against each other, with the exception of the Dnipro. Crimea has been in Russian control since 2014. For a while now, there's not really been any strong belief that Ukraine is going to get that back in any sort of negotiated settlement. Luhansk is about 99% in control by the Russian Federation right now. Same thing, hearing that Russia will get Luhansk is not something Ukraine wants to hear, but also kind of lines up with the map, like if you were to freeze the lines right now. Mm-hmm. Donetsk, now we're into crazy town, Ben. This is ridiculous. So Donetsk is about 70-ish% controlled by Russia, but this is where the heaviest battles of the war have been fought. We're talking about Bakhmut, right now Pokrovsk, Konstantinivka, right in the middle of it. This is the area where Russia is moving meter by meter, suffering tens of thousands of casualties. Like, their heaviest losses are happening in Donetsk. What they're asking is that Ukraine will withdraw from the remaining 30% that they control, and this will become a neutral demilitarized zone, but it will be Russian territory.
That's dumb.
So this is just ceding the rest of Donetsk to Russia. Like, I guess the agreement there is that Russian troops won't move into the rest of Donetsk, but they will be right on the front in Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. So the thing from a couple months ago was, are we going to ask Ukraine to cede territory? Here's your answer. The answer is yes, we are asking Ukraine to cede territory.
It's, I think, personally ridiculous, obviously, but I don't know why they would agree to this. Don't they control most of Kherson anyways?
No, they control Kherson City, but they're talking about that being frozen along the current lines. Or Ukraine controls Kherson City. So that's going to be frozen along the lines. It's Donetsk that they'd be giving up. A big chunk of territory, very strategically, I'll say operationally significant in this war. There's a lot of fortifications built throughout Donetsk that have shown to be very, very challenging to bypass. And they're asking Ukraine to just say, okay, fine. You couldn't take it, but
I
we'll
have
just
a question on that. When you say fortifications, what do you mean? Are we talking like minefields, tank traps? I assume they're not bunkers, because you just blow up a bunker with like a missile. But like, what do you mean when you say fortifications?
But all of those things. So as the war has gone on, Ukraine has dug trench systems that include bunkers, forward observation posts, underground facilities for artillery, for drone teams, underground command posts. Like, yes, a missile could destroy one of those. Russia doesn't have enough missiles to destroy all of those, because some of these underground outposts, it's just a platoon or a company level team. Talking about hundreds of these across the front, and they're really hard to spot from above because it goes down and then over and over and over and over, and then you're actually in the bunker. So a lot of fighting positions would be the way to describe it.
Do tank traps work? Or I don't know if they're called traps. The big metal stakes, like
they can. Yeah, stuff. They can.
How? Can you just go around it?
If you go around it. So you can't go over them. When they're placed correctly and you try to drive a tank, or a wheeled vehicle is not going to be strong enough to push it, and a tracked vehicle often can get flipped up on its side or exposes the underbelly. It just makes it very challenging to go over either those dragon's teeth that are concrete or the kind of railroad ties. So wheeled vehicles can't go through. Tracked vehicles technically could, but they get kind of popped up on the front. So generally, you don't see vehicles trying to go over them because of that. They have to go around. So the purpose they serve isn't generally that they actually stop vehicles. It's that vehicles choose to go somewhere else. So you wouldn't necessarily cover the entire line with those. You would put those in areas that might be an easy approach for mechanized or armored assaults and force them to come down one road or force them into a valley where it's easier to rain down fire than, say, an open field. So you use those often to kind of canalize enemy movement into a designated killing field.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, so number 22. After agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security agreements will not apply in the event of the breach of this commitment.
Feels like a
Am I not reading this right?
No. It's just saying that nobody will violate these agreements once they're in place, right?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm glad we have that in writing. All right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so we're down to like at least 3 of these could have been cut now. But anyways, 23. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and activities will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea.
How nice of them. Wow, you can use your own river. They don't even have control of the Dnieper River anywhere. So what are they dictating this at all? They're not even on. Are they on the Dnieper River anywhere?
Yeah. They're essentially saying that they're not going to bomb ships in the south. So further north, it's all through Ukrainian territory. But when you get down kind of near Zaporizhzhia and then through Kherson, that is the Russian positions are right up against the river, and Ukraine can't. I mean, everything on that water gets hit right now. So essentially, they're just saying they're not going to bomb Ukrainian shipping.
Interesting. Number 24. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. All remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. A family reunification program will be implemented, and measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict.
Look, in any ceasefire agreement, you have to look for the things that could get caught up to where one side is going to say you are not, to the other side you are not being genuine, you're not proceeding in good faith. A lot of times we look at the exchange of fire. Like, if one side's shooting, you're not operating in good faith, the ceasefire falls apart, right? This is one of those, I mean, dude, this is a minefield right here. When they say, first off, I want this to happen, this would be a good thing to happen, and it should happen, I don't know that Russia knows where they have moved all of the Ukrainian children to.
No.
So they have taken Ukrainian children from the occupied territories, from the early days in the war, and have moved them, kind of given them up for adoption across Russia. And I'd be surprised if they are able to get all of those children back at this point. And you run the risk, and this was one of the reasons that this has been such a hot topic from the minute it happened. You now have some of these kids, they were 2 years old when they were taken. Now they've been growing up in a Russian family for 3 years. That probably feels like their family. So the kid's going to be a little freaked out being taken away and returned to their original family it's a mess. They shouldn't have, it's a mess that Russia put people in the first place, but this isn't, when you're talking about prisoners, okay, we can get the Red Cross in there on both sides if both sides permit it, and we can do a pretty good accounting of the prisoners. When we start talking about bodies, that gets a little harder because you're going to be having to go through the battlefield, and there's going to be a lot of people that are missing, quite frankly. There's usually a little bit of leniency given by both militaries on that front. Like, I don't know where all of your bodies are. You probably don't know where all of our bodies are. But the returning of all the children, I don't think Russia could do that right now if they genuinely wanted to. And Ukraine has, from what I've seen, done a pretty good job of tracking all of their children that have been trafficked into Russia. There's going to be a pretty significant delta in those numbers, and it could be the kind of thing that would cause a deal to fall apart.
A shout out to Melania Trump, though.
Yep.
Because that is one of her major causes. She keeps writing letters. She's talking to people about getting this fixed. So, credit where credit's due there. Go ahead for number 25.
25. Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days.
I love that the Russians are so concerned about democracy in another country. I'm glad that they're so dedicated to the freedom and liberty of the Ukrainian people. Now, when's the election in Russia going to be? Real election, right? Anyways, number 26. All parties.
Hold on real quick. That's one that. Funny that Russia's pushing that, but at the end of the day, Zelensky and team, they've talked about that. Like when the war is over, that's the reason that Ukraine has, as a country, mind you, the parliament, not Zelensky, but their government has made the decision to not hold elections, is first, they're under martial law. So they'd have to lift that. But they cannot hold fair elections right now. They have people that are prisoners in Russia that are not going to be able to vote. They have countless soldiers near the front. We have situations at the front right now where they're not able to rotate soldiers off for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. So they're just not going to be able to vote. Like, you're telling me that a president being elected in wartime, where, like, no doubt a major portion of the platform is going to be how to go about the future of the war, and you're not going to allow soldiers on the front to vote. That's ridiculous. Prisoners are not going to be able to vote. Displaced families abroad. You have to figure out how to, in the middle of fighting a war, have a fair election with international mail-in ballots from refugees around the world. That's insane. On top of that, what are you going to do about the polling locations? This country is under drone and missile attack every single day and night. Do you think Russia would just say, like, okay, if you guys are going to hold elections on Tuesday, we just won't attack on Tuesday, get those ballots out to the troops? Like, there's just genuinely no way to hold an election that genuinely represents the Ukrainian people in the middle of this war. Now, if the war stops, and the war has stopped for 99 days, on that 100th day, I feel pretty confident they'd be able to hold a very valid, very fair, very free election. So I think that's fine.
Was it Churchill who was they had an election near the end of the war and he was voted out? Churchill was voted out at the very end of World War II, right? Do you think Zelensky gets reelected, or do you think he has like a Churchill, where he just goes down as like the great statesman, but he's out?
I'm not so sure he runs again. Mm-hmm. He has taken, I think, an emotional beating doing all this, the emotional toll, like anyone would in that position. My gut says he may not run. He might just step aside and say it's time for somebody else to come in.
Could you imagine being Zelensky? You run in 2019. You're like, this war that we have off in the East is kind of going nowhere. You kind of run as a joke about corruption, and then you win, and like the first thing that happens to you is you're blackmailed by the President of the United States, and it's like a whole international scandal. And then 2 years later, there's a full-scale invasion by Russia. And you're just like, can I just go back to being president on TV? I mean, all matters considered, he's done a very good job, but that's crazy. I can imagine regretting all my life choices at that point. Anyways, number 26. All parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. Okay. That sounds like the Vladimir Putin protection clause.
Yeah, Russia's like, put that one in there.
Yeah.
But at the end, yeah. I wonder how many conflicts we've seen where that's a clause. I genuinely don't know. I can see how there's been plenty of conflicts where maybe a warring party would want that to be in there. But isn't that a little bit like guilt by admission?
I guess maybe like in World War II, the Allies, right? Like they won, so they got to have the Nuremberg trials, but the Axis didn't get any complaints, right?
Yeah, but this says all parties involved, amnesty across the board. I wonder how many times we've seen that. And every one of these peace deals is different, right? And little settlements.
What did
like
the U.S.
Is the U.S. liable? That
Is the U.S. liable for any, like, with Iraq after Saddam's government? I assume not. I assume didn't the U.S. just, like, I assume the Iraqi people or the government isn't responsible for the actions of Saddam, and the U.S. isn't responsible for that? Or are there still,
Saddam,
like...
we were responsible for ourselves. We had soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
But I feel like we never see lawsuits or anything come out of that. Maybe they just know we won't follow them. But, like, surely, I feel like this is maybe more common than one would think. Maybe not, though. I don't know. Anyways.
Let's jump on here. 27.
Yeah.
This agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, headed by President Donald J. Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations.
Is he, like, always in charge of it, or is it just when he's done being president?
That seems like an important detail.
Yeah, this is also, isn't this the Gaza agreement, too? So, interesting. I mean, wow, you could not ask for a better head of the Peace Council. You know, he's Mr. Peace
I thought that
himself.
was like a term that Trump randomly said at one point. It's not like an actual thing, is it?
A Peace Council? No. As far as I know, this just seems like more bureaucracy.
It has to be a thing, though. Like, we can't have written into an agreement an entity that doesn't exist to be the thing to oversee it. That has to be like an actual thing. So it must be a thing.
I think they're saying they're going to create a Peace Council. But my understanding is, I don't know how frequently it's a thing. Usually, like, the UN is, like, a thing where people can go and they can hash it out. But also you have, like, pretty strict security agreements that escalate quite fast to keep peace. But it seems could you imagine being Volodymyr Zelensky, and Trump's in charge of the Peace Council, and that means you got to fly to Washington, you got to sit there and hear him say every 2 weeks. I'd be like, come on, dude. Putin likes it because he wants to come to America because his country sucks, but Zelensky's like, I'm tired of these flights, man. Do you think, and we have one more point left, but do you think we will see European leaders in the White House next week? As usually when this kind of thing happens, although this is much graver of a situation, they're usually all in there, you know? And
I don't know. There's kind of two takes. Did you see Landesbergis, the former Lithuanian foreign minister?
I've not.
He chastised Europe. He said, if you are a European leader asking your team to book you on the next flight to Washington to go talk to daddy, please don't. Not without a plan, not cap in hand, not humiliating us in front of the cameras at the Oval Office. Europe is our continent. Our future is decided here, not there.
I agree.
So which stance does Europe go with? Is it we need to get back aligned with the United States, or is it enough's enough, we're just going to go this without the U.S.? I think the smart move is the latter, unfortunately.
No, I think if you're Europe right now, if you're Ukraine, I mean, you're not getting anything in return. Ukraine's not getting anything from the United States. They're getting intelligence and, I guess, patriots. Okay. But they're not getting any more aid. So if you're Ukraine, it's kind of like, I don't know, can we plug the holes, you know? And maybe you hold out long enough to wait till there's like a discharge petition to give you back intel sharing in Congress? I don't know. If I'm Ukraine, I'm not signing this. And I also think it is a good time for Europe to step up here and just put their foot down and say, you know, NATO's so powerful because we're in it. I mean, like, it's the merging, right? So I would like them to kind of put their foot down here, kind of see what happens, you know? Anyways, number 28. Once all parties agree to this memorandum, the ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to agreed points to begin implementation of the agreement.
All right, kind of an administrative point there. But big picture, looking at all this, Ben, we've argued about what is bad for the United States, what is bad for NATO, and what is bad for Ukraine. What in this do you see as being negative for Russia? Like, what is a thing where they're like, ugh, guys, fine?
There's nothing. Nothing is bad for them at all in this.
I see. Okay, so I think the unfreezing of Russian assets but using them to rebuild, I think, is a little bit.
But they don't have that money anyways. They have them for 3 years. Probably just a write-off.
Look, I'm trying here. The Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, that is not getting everything they wanted. I think not getting everything you wanted is a far cry from losing territory like Ukraine is and having to give up territory. But technically speaking, that is not the maximalist Russian demands. But outside of that, it is kind of what Russia wanted. No Ukraine in NATO, no Western troops in Ukraine, ending the war. They get to keep territory. The U.S. is going to recognize all of that territory. That's big.
You think they're going to sign it in Munich? It doesn't seem like there's anything bad here. Do you think if they sign this appeasement is worse than the appeasement that happened in 38? Because I will only say, perhaps the 38 appeasement seems worse because you know what happens next.
Yeah, that's the thing is the reason what was so bad, the reason Munich was so bad is because of what came after it. So yes. It entirely depends on what comes next. I think we're too close to rolling those dice. I think that's why we don't mess around with this. Is we want to as little as possible say no. This time is different than World War II. I don't think that's a conversation we really want to have. We want to avoid being in that situation at all. But I mean that's the clear comparison right now.
I will not say that appeasement never works because there are examples of appeasement working. Granted, it's a different time, but the British Empire did appease the Americans as they pushed westward, right? There were several points where there could have been conflict points outside of 1812, and they just did not engage, right? They did appease the Americans quite a bit, and that worked, right? Now we're the best of friends, but it's quite a bit different here. I mean, Putin has made clear that he has no intention of doing that, so I think this what's happening right now is more of an analog to 38 than it is to 1814 or whatever. What do you make of that? Do you think we're doomed? Yeah. Do you think this is the start of the next world war? Or do you think this is all going to fall apart and we'll be back in 3 weeks cheery because Macrolian saved us?
No. I don't think this is going to be accepted. I'm a little bit depressed because apparently this is what we as a country think is a good move. It sucks to see that this is what we consider like a positive step, and I think in so many ways it's actually harmful to the United States. But I don't think it's going to be accepted as is. I think what we're going to see is Europe and Ukraine come back with a counterproposal that will serve as kind of a soft rejection to where they are never going to say no to this plan. They're going to offer up their own plan with some adjustments. And Russia already isn't agreeing to this. So I think odds are this thing just kind of falls through the cracks over the course of the next week. Trump will get distracted by something else before or on Thanksgiving, and we'll be on to something new, right? I mean, Ben, it was just a couple weeks ago. These guys were all supposed to meet in person again, right?
Yeah.
We lose track of how many times the 2-week deadlines have come and gone. So it's hard to take this one more seriously. My big takeaway is I just hate that we're seeing essentially like the U.S. put out on paper what we think is a good setup, and we're just like cutting our leg off, putting the gun to our own head and cutting one leg off after the other. Like, what are we doing here, boys?
So I agree with you, but I don't think that the United States thinks this is a good idea. I think Steve Witkoff thinks it's a good idea, and I think Donald Trump does. Yeah. But the State Department, when they were asked
right now, it's our representatives
when the State Department was asked about this by Axios, it was the first time they had ever seen the document. They had not seen it before until it was presented to them. So that leads me to believe this. A lot of the people I know in the State Department from both parties would not agree to this. I also think you see a lot of members of Congress, both Democrat and Republican, signing off and saying, hell no, this is awful. We're not doing this. Right? And I also think the American people, they don't like tyrants. So I think this is a decision by two people, and I hope that the American system... I mean, here's the thing. I think if this was happening last week, this would be successfully clapped away and destroyed. But the fact that it's happening at the end of this week, going into a holiday week, is to the advantage of Russia and Trump and Witkoff here. So I hope Congress can successfully put a stop to this, whether it's through discharge or the Republican Senate or whatever. But this very clearly seems bad. I also want to know what Marco Rubio's up to right now. I mean, is he just in a ball crying on the floor? Or is he like trying to fight to stop this? Because I mean, we've said a lot of stuff about him, but I do think, at principle, he would reject this.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Nobody's really going on record right now. None of the U.S. officials involved in this are doing interviews or anything. We'll see if that changes this weekend, but so far, nobody's really talked about it. We're just getting kind of the Trump sound bites during interviews where he just talks about how, like, this war shouldn't have started in the first place. Doesn't really answer any questions about our 28-point plan.
This is you know what? Any Ukrainians who are listening, I have a piece of advice for you. You should make Zoran Mondani your ambassador to the United States. Trump's in love with that guy. I've never seen him.
Really likes him right now.
I've never seen, I mean, he was looking at him like a father loves a son. I've never seen anything like it. And he even put up a picture of FDR for him. He was, I went into the archives and I got maybe the best photo of FDR anyone's ever seen, and I hung it up. And Mamdani was like, yeah, I got a photo in front of it. And then Trump posted the photos. He's like, it was so wonderful having the next great mayor of New York City, and it's them in front of the FDR picture. Could you imagine George W. Bush posing in front of an FDR photo, or like Joe Biden posing in front of a Ronald Reagan one? I can't. I just can't. I can't. And Trump was just like, yeah, whatever. And I've seen some people go, well, they're all New Yorkers. And I was like, I guess, man. Okay. Like, we'll go with that. So if you're Ukrainian, maybe you hire Mondani to run your comms here or something. I don't know. But it definitely seems. Do you want to talk about what's going on in Venezuela very briefly? Do we have any indication there? Do you think
I think we hold on it. It's a lot of the same over the last couple weeks. Yeah. Build up, threats. I think there's going to be a decision point there before too long, and that's probably worth addressing at that point.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, folks, I think that's going to conclude this week's show. Preston, it's been 1 year. Do you have a favorite moment? I've been putting together a video of our best moments. Do you have a favorite moment or top 3 moments from the past year?
Top three. Yeah, it's a lot.
You can just give us one. Just give us your favorite moment then.
You're putting me on the spot, man. I feel like this is something for a quality episode. This should have been something I had time to think about, and I haven't.
Okay. I mean, no, we're just best friends, but whatever. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. There's been a couple Trump impressions you've done that have been pretty spot on. Really timed well. I always like those.
I always like when I go off on my like opening spiels and I have no idea where it's going, because you don't know where it's going. But also the truth is, and maybe the audience knows this, once the hands come out and I start yapping, I don't know where the hell I'm going either. I just let the spirit guide me.
There's also been a handful of times you've like read me into some like deep, dim conspiracy stuff about something, and I have no idea what you're talking about. That's fun too. I always like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah.
Oh, one of our first episodes, I liked when I called the Grinch Hitler, and you were like, that really took you off guard. That was a good one. And I still stand by it a year later. The Grinch is the Hitler of Christmas, and it's bizarre that kids dress up and they celebrate that. I don't. I will never celebrate that. That'll never be anything you see me celebrate. A hard line. No, I'd say my favorite. Last 2 episodes ago were good when you were trying to tell me how to say that Ukrainian city.
Pokrovsk?
Pokrovsk. Yeah.
Oh shit! You're still not there. You have not been practicing. I'm not practicing. It's okay. I can't criticize anybody for pronunciations. Mine are pretty rough. That's just one I say a lot.
It's rough when you read most of your information because you never know how to say anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like, okay. Well, anyways, folks.
You just pronounce it in your head, and you know that's not the right way to do it. And then eventually you open your mouth, and you're like, oh, that was way worse than I thought.
Oh, you know what my favorite moment is? Your never-ending beef with Doug the Pug and the Nashville influencer contest. That was electrifying. That was awesome. Anyways, folks, let us know your favorites, and we will see you next week. Are we going to do it next week?
Yeah, we'll do it next week.
A little Black Friday, Good Sunday, or not Good Sunday. What's the Saturday after Thanksgiving called? I don't think it has a name. I think it's just called Saturday. All right, well, we'll see you for next Saturday, folks. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side.